Hello, Senior Seminar. I hope you are enjoying this unusually warm November day and looking forward to spending time with family or friends or both in the next few days and getting a little bit of a break. And I hope this weather helps with your travel plans if you are traveling. So, thank you, first of all, for your comparison papers of the two books we read. And I'm glad to see that you found these interesting. Please feel free to share these books with people you know, especially in these sectors in restaurants and healthcare, because one thing about ethnographies is that they are pretty accessibly written. So, given that I've never worked in the restaurant industry or healthcare, I found both of these books to be insightful and helped me understand more of these behind the scenes relationships. I appreciate that. You understood a lot of the insights that these authors had, that the inequalities are rooted not only in those specific businesses and sectors, but that those sectors are the ways that inequalities continue to get institutionalized, that they manifest these underlying social structures. And you all get it. So I'm so glad to get to read your reflections on those. And it sounds like you really got into those videos about the future of work. I did too. I was also pleased to run across those. And I want to look at more. I don't know why they haven't been made in 2025. I guess we can all kind of wonder whether the push against DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, means that this project is on hold. I don't know. But it's great that Indeed gave those filmmakers funding, because those films have some pretty high production values, even though they're short. And it also gives me hope for the future of Hollywood films that have these thoughtful societal self-reflections as plot themes. I wanted to share something that Elijah said in the discussion, in case you didn't get to read it. He watched Bitter Leaf and Meal Ticket. And he said both of those films kind of tie together by showing that the future of work isn't just about advanced tech or better opportunities, but about the pressure that comes with trying to stay afloat in systems that are always demanding more. Whether it's being monitored through tech or trying to make the right call in a high stress moment, people end up dealing with a lot of invisible labor. Watching these made me realize that a lot of the stress tied to modern work isn't about physical effort, but about the constant need to perform, decide, and manage things that aren't really controllable. It makes me think that as work keeps evolving, the biggest challenge won't be learning new skills, but trying to balance ambition with protecting your own mental space. And I think that's really interesting. Right after the pandemic, there was an opportunity where a lot of young people, especially going into the job market for the first time, were able to do a lot of negotiating for family time, for maternity, paternity leaves, those types of things, because the job market was really hot and it was a great opportunity. And now we're in a bit of a retrenchment, and you kind of wonder whether you're able to do that kind of negotiating. But it is worth a try, in my opinion. You need to figure out how you're going to balance work and life. Several of you recognized points made by the founders of our discipline back to Marx and Weber, and it's pretty interesting that the futures that they predicted are still unfolding, right? Even in what is now described as a postmodern or post-industrial era. Another theorist that you might find interesting, if you haven't read him before, is Michel Foucault, a philosopher who wrote about the ever-increasing surveillance in society. So that's something else that we are definitely seeing, and with cameras everywhere. There are cameras on campus. Your phone is spying on you, right? Big corporations who own those phones and own those programs are all-encompassing surveillance mechanisms. At least one of you would watch the video about the caretaker of the goldfish, the last remaining goldfish on Earth as it's going extinct, and how the caretaker put so much care and thoughtfulness and meaning into his work. And then his job gets eliminated. So he'll no longer be needed, right? So one takeaway from that, could be the way climate disaster is not only going to eliminate certain species, but human jobs as well that were related to caretaking for those species. And one question I have after watching all these videos is what happens to human creativity, especially in the ever evolving world of high tech? Can it be emboldened by technology, or is it going to be squashed? I had a great conversation with an art professor friend of mine about this, because there's some pretty amazing animation videos being made by AI that can be made in almost no time. And so what happens to artists who are spending months trying to make the same type of product? I look forward to reading your first drafts of your papers. Important announcement, I've added a couple of days to the deadline, so you can have until Tuesday, December 2nd, and I hope that helps you carve some time out for yourself and your family if you celebrate Thanksgiving. The word carve was not an intentional pun. And as I've mentioned to some of your descriptions that are in your annotated bibliography are texts that you can pretty much move into your paper. Just follow your outline, and maybe one way to tackle getting pen to paper, so to speak, is to plop those into your outline. Now, that's not going to be your paper, but it might help you feel like, okay, I've gotten started, and you might feel a little emboldened. Don't feel that you need to stick with your outline. If it's not working, feel free to tweak it, and I don't need to look at the outline again. Everybody, as you know, pays super attention to plagiarism, and that includes not using AI or other sources that are not your own words. Make sure that you're putting direct quotes into quotation marks. Give the author, the year, and the page number in those parenthetical citations. And as I said in the instructions, stay away from long block quotes. So what do I mean by this? I don't want to read a paper that strings together big blocks of text straight from your sources. If there's a quote that you feel like it's necessary because it illustrates something you're trying to say, see if you can just use the most relevant parts of the text. What is it you really need? So take some time to really think, okay, what are some really great quotable quotes that might illustrate what I'm trying to argue in this paper. Students in the past have asked me how I'm going to grade the drafts. Will it be as stringent as I grade your final paper? Here's what I've done. On the rubric, I've put categories that are labeled approaching. So, for example, in the part that's about writing mechanics, in that column, if your writing mechanics are looking pretty good, it's kind of a B level, I would put approaching a B level, right? And what that means is the paper, it could be a particular grade for the draft, but if those edits are made, then that's kind of the grade that you would expect in your final paper, right? It's important to make that distinction, because I think students might assume that if I got a certain grade on the draft, if I just turn the draft around as my final paper and plug it in, I'm going to get the same grade. And so that's usually not going to be the case, right? So look closely at those places where it says approaching. So this is approaching a B, but you need to, work on whatever I'm asking you to do, grammar or something, in order for that to be a B in that column. I hope that helps you. Here's some writing advice I've been giving you across the semester and in my comments as well on individual papers. I would love to see you all dig in and really do some good drafting and redrafting, looking for things like punctuation. Remember that punctuation matters. If you remember my PowerPoint where I gave you some examples of punctuation issues, such as, let's eat grandpa. Is there a comma missing there? Also, look back at your edits and see if your paper is rambling. Are you going on and on about a particular point? Are you repeating yourself just to get up to the word count? How can you tighten the paper? Look for good, solid, full paragraphs, more than 2 sentences, and work on good transitional words between your sentences and between your paragraphs. That's one key to having a great flow to a paper that's readable and hangs together. I think that both of our book authors do a great job of transitions, so it might be worth your time to go back, just read a few pages in those books to get some cadence in your heads for how they are writing and transitioning from one thought to another, from one point to another. I think that could certainly help. Don't forget your writing memo. That's part of your grade, part of the assignment, and your references. Make sure to alphabetize your references. And I hope you'll take advantage of the Writing Center. I know this time of year it might be hard to get an appointment, but it's worth a try if you would like some extra eyes or if you have some questions that you need some clarification on. Also, contact me. Let me know if you have questions that I can help with. I'm around this week. And I would like to move on to talk about a few items in the news that are related to our course. One thing that I'd like you to take away from your sociology major is a recognition of how much of our sociological vocabulary, sociological ideas are actually infused throughout our culture, our shared language outside of academia. And it's not really recognized so much. And perhaps that's because a lot of the terms straight from sociology. I've recently been hearing news commentators using the term cognitive, which you might have also learned about in psychology class, right? This contrast between two different realities. And although it's not super mainstream, the term intersectionality has definitely been picked up by the activist community. Black Lives Matter, for example, address gender and sexuality issues as well as race. So one of the terms that I've also seen recently comes from the author you all will know pretty well by now, C. Wright Mills. And he wrote a book called The Power Elite. You might want to pick up this book that he wrote several decades ago. It's a critical analysis of the way power works at the top of our society. And he outlined the way that there are these power brokers behind the scenes in what is supposed to be a bottom-up democracy, right? It's supposed to be a democracy run by the voters, the majority of the voters. But he identified three institutions in particular that intertwine with each other, and those are government, corporations or the business world, and the military. And the people in top positions in those institutions know each other well. They play golf together, maybe they go on vacation together, they find jobs for each other's buddies, kind of an old boys network, right? And they sometimes move positions between the institutions. And this is how certain companies are able to get government contracts for building military equipment, for example. Well, that term came up in an article in the New York Times this weekend. The author of the article had read some of the recently released Epstein files, article was the rare access into the inner workings of the power elite that he got to read through the email exchanges that were going, is that this network, this power elite is really larger than those three institutions. It includes a lot more of those institutions, right? It includes Hollywood, it includes academia. And so, for example, the former president of Harvard, Larry Summers, has just been asked to step down from several of his positions after some emails came to light between Summers and Epstein. And he is, last I heard, he's still teaching some courses at Harvard, but he had to resign from some think tanks and other big organizations that he was part of. And we'll see whether he'll get to keep teaching. I'm not sure about that. And Larry Summers, by the way, had already kind of had a fall from grace to some extent in academic and feminist circles because of statements that he made when he was president. He basically stated that women were not biologically able to make the same achievement in the sciences as men. And we all know that research does not hold that up at all. And then one other relevant item in the news that I think is relevant to us was the G20 summit, which just finished in South Africa, which is where the leaders of the top 20 countries in the world, really the richest countries, right, come together, although our country didn't participate this year. And at the summit, the representative from Finland gave a short speech, in which he made some points that were very relevant to our discussion about globalization. He said multilateralism, it's basically a cooperation between countries, across countries, and he said it's being threatened by what he would call multipolarity. In other words, countries are pulling apart from one another, power is not being shared. Um, Power is being relocated to some extent. It's going to the east, it's going to the south, right? Sort of away from Western Europe and the United States and Canada. And one of the problems he pointed out was that something that we had discussed actually recently in our globalization module, which is those post World War II global institutions, if you remember, called the Bretton Woods institutions. And he said those are needing reform because they are run by and benefiting those countries that have the greatest power. So again, if you think of these two examples I just gave you, both of them have to do with power and the way power is, is ruling things, changing things, perhaps ignoring certain things that need to be addressed. He mentions the just horrible civil war in Darfur in Sudan that may be off of a lot of people's radar, for example. So those are my thoughts, and I want to wish everyone a really wonderful, relaxing, hopefully break, and I look forward to your papers. Thank you.